Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to the channel RPG with DBJ. I'm your host, DBJ, and I'm surrounded by the best and brightest in the tabletop RPG community. Thank you very much for stopping by. And this is a long form show on 3 platforms, unscripted. We just take a subject, we talk about it all week long, and then we subdivide it each day, but we basically have a lot of fun. And, basically the show is here for knocking the cobwebs out the brain, coming up with some great ideas. Lloyd, what's going on there? Cam, always here as usual. And then, of course, our moderators, Tesla, Ranger, and Deadman. And then we have Omen from around the world. Good evening there, sir. Now, this week we're talking about Undead and Necromancers, but today is a special day because it's World Building Wednesday. And thinking whatever subject we talk about, however metaphysical it is, or how deep in the woods it is, when it comes to tabletop role-playing games, especially Dungeons and Dragons, we're going to build a world where that subject changes the world. It's the thing. It's the inciting event. It is the part that's going to absolutely modify the world. Now, I think the two things I think that might come to mind, and I thought we would try to shift away a little bit away from it, are there are two setting types that I think we can pull from, but I think we could take a little bit of a left turn on it. The Jarl DM says, and I've listened to the review. I don't have it yet, but I plan on getting it. Says there's a brilliant book called Magical Industrial Revolution. It's easy to think of how rampant rising of the dead could cause massive issues in society. Oh, hells yes. Now, there's two ways we can think about this, right? We can think about this as a moment in time, like for some reason, like necromancy becomes its own industry so it could, what am I trying to say? The downfall of society could be right around the corner. But this setting could be built in that very moment before the society falls. Which is also a possibility. Like, you guys know me. Sure, getting to the end of something is always cool, but for me, I like living in the middle. I like the idea of, like, sure, this society might fall in 7 years, but that's going to be a pretty amazing or depressing 7 years time when the undead sweep across the world. Or we could take this in another way. You could think of the setting as having already gone through its growing pains, and this is a world that has had a number of generations where the undead have already swept across the world, and the living people that are in it have already lived, grown, died, and had multiple generations within it. Now, I can already see that living, breathing, biological beings are probably second-class citizens. Yeah, I agree with you, Omen. So even if they're not violent zombies, it's still going to be something different. If they're also intelligent with their minds still intact, things will be even worse. Of course, because if for no other reason, your mid to high level, intelligent, sentient undead could literally fold their arms and outlive any biological creatures. So they'll definitely be in power. Now, how they maintain their power probably will be based on what type of undead. And I could see the undead creatures, vampire lords, mummy lords, skeletal warriors, gas wraiths and wights being lords of their own domains, and having the world almost divided up into these like little petty kingdoms of the undead. Now, Jarl DM says, so labor is expensive. Yeah, real life labor is very expensive. Human beings are incredibly expensive to take care of. biological beings require a lot of energy. We don't think about it, but the caloric energy it takes for us to live is quite expensive. We need a lot of land, a lot of oxygen, so much water. We need a ton of water to just take care of the food that we need to eat just to do things. So human beings are in the large scope of things very expensive and not very efficient when it comes to being progressive. So I say that because Lloyd Jarl DM says so labor is expensive. Undead labor is free or close to it. Don't have to feed them. They don't have to rest. They don't need a place to sleep. Never miss the harvest again. Build a castle in a month. Yeah, and guess what? You never have to worry about morale because human beings we tend to need a lot of motivation to do things, or at least a lot of motivation to change the way we do things as well. Yeah, so the undead can build, and if they die off, man, just get another one, right? Um, Omen says, imagine the dead people you owe money to, and vice versa. Knocking on your door, they're like, you owe me 50 gold. And you're like, oh, are you serious? Are you back from the dead? Yes, I am. I can imagine court cases where there's like ghosts or zombies in there trying to um, point out the people who killed them. Now, when it comes to like the free labor thing and the humanity, I could imagine human humanity. I know I'm focusing on humans, but just they're all the humanoids, right? I could imagine them being divided up and thought of just the way we think of resources today, right? Like, would human beings be like cattle or wheat? Just nobody cares, even as the undead don't even care about educating them. It's just human beings thrown in pits, forced into camps so that they can biologically reproduce, and they are harvested for mindless undead. Whereas there might also be humanity might be enthralled with their undead overlords to the point that they look at them as divine, and they look forward, the best and brightest, the best educated, the best warriors look forward to the day when they go through the ritual to die, maybe like a bloodletting ritual or a heart removal ritual or whatever the case may be, to then become, an undead warrior or undead wizard, or maybe the one who's of the faith, their spirit goes on to become a ghost or something like that in service of their undead lords and whatnot. Yeah. Oh yeah, Rickard. Yeah. Oh, it's like, oh, we're going with the undead in charge. Hell's yes. And I could imagine the necromantic colleges being quite important as well. We got to keep those mummy lords intact. We got to make sure that the zombie hordes are not deteriorating too much. So there might even be whole units like that. Your DM says, I could see necromancer guilds that rent out labor squads, and that you could sell your body after your death to keep providing for your family to the guild. Oh, hell yeah. Um, and maybe even, depending on how long this is going on, I could even see your family taking care of you in undeath, right? Like rewrapping bandages that are soaked in some kind of like salves and stuff for your body. The elders of the family teaching the young how to restitch some of the dry wounds on the body of your loved ones so that they can go back out there into like battlefields or as spies, or in the army or something like that. Gaster, what's going on? Yeah, Omen says, I believe there was something in the Bible about that, like a lady who kept changing husbands because 6 of her husbands died. Some Pharisees asked who'd be her legal husband in heaven. Dumb question, but it does make sense. Yeah, you know what? That becomes a issue too. Like immortality. I know this seems like a minor thing, but immortality does bring with it this idea that things never go away. Like, with human beings, we die off and then things are forgotten, or We 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 forgive petty um, transgressions against each other as we get older. Sometimes, not everybody does this, but with age, we've always heard the term, "Nah, I've grown past that," or dude, that's water under the bridge. Don't worry about it. But if you're immortal and you're an immortal vampire lord or something, and you're getting ready to step up to the next plate, like for 600 years, you're like, that guy owes me gold pieces. Oh my god, I can't wait to get it. And you start sending your undead minions against them. Now, um, I think something else that like Jarl DM is talking about, like free labor, um, in terms of building things. I could imagine this being a very okay. This is a weird thing. This combination, but it may not progress technologically faster. But I could see industrially it would be enormous, right? The what is it called? The um, force multiplier, work multiplier would be so great that I could imagine that countrysides could be filled with like castles and walls and keeps and roads and bridges, like this gothic style landscape everywhere. And hell, even the side effects of like um whole populations of ghouls feeding on the dead. Um, whole the sky, the sky's darkened by the swarms and swarms of like giant flies and maggots and sturges and beetles and ravens and vultures and all the what is it, Komodo dragons we talked about the other day, right? Hyenas and jackals and things like. I could imagine, and of course the undead are probably like, I don't care, they're flying around, doesn't bother me any. So I could imagine humanity, if there's any free people, they're probably packed away and tucked away in little hovels and stuff, because the landscape would just get so terrible. Now Rickard says, I mean, it's quite easy to see the living in charge and using the dead to do all the labor and such. Now, if there's any living, I think, in charge of the undead, um, I could imagine them. I'm thinking that that's not necessarily impossible, but they would have to hold on to their spot of power, right? Like, because hiding themselves both physically and like from scrying, from mental possession, and let's not forget, Rickard, that there might even be some necromancers and things like where liches come from. Immortality. If there it might not becoming a vampiric lich or something close to it might not be a bad thing, right? People might not think that's a bad trade-off. Now, if you can find immortality without having to have your body die, I could see that as well with the noblest of the necromantic humanity being in charge and defending themselves with a legion of undead and whatnot. Gaster says, or you go cuckoo because you've lived too long, and your brain will begin to lose it because of it being so overloaded with knowledge. Ooh, shit, I hadn't thought about that one. But yeah, I could see the problem. What is it? The problems of living too long, having an issue, and the council is like, the next person has to take over, and the insane necromantic wizard is like, no, I'm going to stay here forever. Omen's like, there should be an auto divorce law for undead, in that after they die, they should declare their old credentials no longer valid or something. I read a novel about that where you it was modern day, but it was like it was a urban mythology or urban magic where you could become a vampire, but you're technically dead, so you give up all your possessions and stuff to your family and whatnot. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, and like Rickard says, necromancers doesn't mean undead; it just means mage. Right? No, no, no. I don't disagree with that. I'm saying that immortality becomes pretty it becomes a thing you can dangle in front of yourself if you're a necromancer, right? Like, sure, you could be a necromancer for like 60 years, but I think it's better if you live like 300 years. So finding a way to live longer is tempting, I think, when you want to stay in power. Unless, of course, there's a transition like becoming a ghost or a wraith or something like that, like a transition from one level to another. Um, Maybe appointing the loyal people that are below you to take over and whatnot. Or that's where necromancers learn their power from. I could even imagine there being a labor force who's only around simply to be possessed by ghosts in the first place, whether it's their family or not. Tesla ready to bring up TV tropes. Yep. Death Becomes Her. A description of tropes appearing in Death Becomes Her. Imagine for a moment that one drink of a simple elixir could make you immortal. I'll get to that in a minute. Dante says the living might be considered an endangered or protected race. Real dark angle. They may have breeding programs. I thought about that. Breeding programs to make more durable living so they become more durable dead. Yeah, pretty gross. But now this could be forced on people. Like I said, like it could be like cattle. It's expected of you, or expect a lot of pain and death and whatnot. Or it could be a social construct where people are willing to do the thing, right? It might be like Logan's Run of sorts, where sure, up until the age of between 25 and 30, you get to live in protected bliss until the point at which you have to transition on, and then you give of your body to become some kind of undead minion of some sort or whatever. Yeah, Gaster Two Soul says Gaster Two Soul says vampiric cattle. Yep. Absolutely. Breeding grounds, cults, a vampiric cult where the people are willingly just sitting around with almost like I'm thinking of like drug addicts and heroin addicts ready to be fed on yet again to give of their blood to the lords and whatnot. Yep. Yep. Um, yeah, Tesla puts in the thing like, you imagine for a moment that you drink a simple elixir could make you immortal. And then what? Ernest wonders this, and when offered immortality, what's he supposed to do for the rest of eternity? What if he gets bored? And why would he want to be stuck with Madeline and Helen forever? Yeah, I can see a lot of that. Maybe I now we can talk about the human, like the free humans living in this world. I'm not sure what power they possess. There's always going to be rebellions, right? Whether they're short lived or not. How would they rebel in this? I don't know. Rickard says transhumanist versions would be necromancers equal engineers or sleeve shell designers, lesser undead. Lesser undead equals like labor robots, higher undead equals cyborgs. Oh, we're definitely going to talk about that for Future Friday, but hell's yes. Harry, thank you very much. Thanks for the coffee. I appreciate it. And thanks for just stopping by and popping in, giving a super chat. So I really appreciate that, dude. Have a great one and get to sleep. Us graybeards got to stick together, right? Jarl DM says, "Oh, I'm sorry, Cam. Cam says, there could be a thing like becoming a force ghost, called becoming like a weave ghost, where you become a part of the weave and continue on with access to all sorts of magic. Ooh, you could reframe. You, c- I could see magic being reframed in the world, where it's not necessarily you casting a spell, but the magic cast is all from like your ancestors, your friends, family, and such, as spiritual beings who become the air quote spells you cast in the first place. Like, it's not you summoning a magic missile, it's I don't know, your uncle who was one of the best archers in the world 3 generations ago, who's firing like arrows over your shoulder or something like that at people or whatnot. Or when you touch the weave, it's not you learning a school of magic, but it's tapping into the weave that happens to be created by the different people that have died and their like souls have been shred or something like that. I could see that too. There might even be well, um, dangerous locations that are created by the shredding of like of the shredding of souls, where even the undead overlords in this world aren't there. Um, I'm going to pronounce your name is Mufa. Oh, if you don't mind. Talks about ancestral shamanism. Yeah, ancestral shamanism, I think, might be the way that the living people might be able to survive in this world, where it's looked at like Cameron talks about force ghosts, where it's not people being, it's not undead overlords forcing this on people, but it's like begging your ancestors, like, we need some help, and the ancestors are like, hells yes, we're going to help you out. And so, all the classic classes in Dungeons and Dragons, like fighters and druids and sorcerers and stuff, are literally, it's all some sort of ancestral lineage that grants the living human beings some kind of defense against these overlords in this world. Your LDM says some could be highly educated to become greater undead. Some made strong and large to become laborers in those human cattle ranches and stuff. Yeah, yeah, nasty, but yeah. Now I don't know if those people stuck in those cattle places, would they know about the outside world? I don't know. The dynamic would change if they did know there was something outside. Um, Gaster Two Soul says perhaps there's a few humans who escaped vampire torture and somehow developed magical abilities. Maybe some become half vampires after being injected with vampire blood. I can see that. Yes, they're weaker than a vampire, but they still use some vampiric ability along with going out in the sun. Um, Follow me on this thread, but I could imagine a druid could be vampiric in some kind of way, right? Druids have wild shape like vampires. Um, maybe there is a you could take all your classic classes and do a twist on them, making them darker versions of themselves. So, um, so vampires, not vampires. Here I go again. Druids changing into like everything from like bats and wolves and whatnot to, I don't know, white owls and snakes and things, like darker gothic kind of things. Dark paladins, where when they lay on hands, it's not like it's a radiant glow. It's more like you could just flip the script on a paladin and just make everything necrotic, right? You're like, no, you don't have the ability to lay on hands and heal people. It's a necrotic touch. It hurts. Same thing with like drawing their blade and calling it a smite to stop evil. Maybe there's something completely different. Or a paladin from a vampire lord might be able to smite other types of undead because they're like against each other. So there might be like different classifications, like ghoulish paladins versus the skeletal paladins versus the vampire lord paladins. I don't know. Oh man, you guys are going on. Dante says population overload would also be a concern. At some point, you'd run into density issues of maintaining a corporal form. Lesser inductees to the undead may be stuck as ethereal to save space. True. There may need to be some kind of scourge or something to get rid of or listen, people get jealous, right? So maybe there become the thinning of the membrane between our world and the ethereal world, and the fact that they're not moving on to the other realms where their spirits should be going might be a problem. So there could be like these dark necrotic storms that sweep through because the membrane between worlds has thinned, and you just get these rolling like hurricane storms, but the hurricanes are made up of screaming souls or something. Sorry, a little hint for tomorrow, but whatever. Yeah. Dante's like, ally, how'd you cast fireball? Me, dead uncle, car crash, into a fuel truck. That's nasty, but I love it. The way someone dies becomes how they're able to cast the spell. How did you cast Blade Barrier? I don't even want to go into it. Let's let's just say Caesar plus a whole bunch of kitchen knives. Yeah, I'll get to you in a minute, Gaster. Jarl DM says, if you're a smart ruler, you make it a heroic thing to do, an ascension rather than being killed, becoming a part of the greater whole. You made it, yeah. Speaking of paladins, you'd have elite squads of anti-undead police who enforce that only the correct kinds of undead are made. Yeah, because we're thinking now, like opening the book and thinking everything is the way it would be in a book. But how many mistakes would there be? Gaster brought up like half vampires and people brought back from the dead, but there's mistakes. Like maybe a ghost is correct, but a banshee is a terrible thing to create even in an undead world. Or um, if you give of your life on the battlefield as a living human being, they bring back your body or dying body back, and you get raised to ascension. That might be the cool thing. Like instead of spraying chrome into your mouth and screaming, jumping out of a rickety old car in Mad Max Fury Road and going Valhalla. Instead, it's like going on the battlefield and like with a backpack full of explosives or something, and they bring back your shredded body to have you ascend to another state of being. Might be kind of cool. And because there are different classifications, like you said, like anti-undead patrols going around, I could imagine the ghouls of this world might be looked down upon, but are necessary to clean up the piles of like dead and disgusting bodies that are everywhere because of the all the failed attempts to do things. It's pretty nasty. Gaster says talks about the humans that have escaped, say, from the vampire lords, whatever. Says these humans could form a small guild called the Council of Beating Blood. Ooh, yeah. A pyromancer couldn't be harmed by fire, and in fact, the fire is absorbed through their very skin, allowing them to expel it against enemies. Now, I could even see that happening, like an ancestor that burned to death, granting that power. It's pretty bad. Gaster goes on to say barbarians are no longer courageous, but are Neanderthalithic beasts who can go into a blood rage, and instead of using axes or swords, they could just pummel enemies with their bare hands because affected by their brains so the vampire blood has affected their brains so much they don't even know how to use basic weapons. Um, I could even see them. Could you imagine, like, you could just reskin your basic weapons, and they might have like clawed, like the Wolverine claws, but they're like external gauntlets or something, or blades on the back of their hands, and they willingly go into these like blood rages or something. I can see a barbarian uh, class being reskinned as having like vampiric blood. I'd, I'd be down for that. If you're gonna make a setting like this, hell's yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, Cam says ghouls eat corpses. What about a force of ghouls sent out to clean up zombie infestations by re-killing them, then consuming the corpse? Then all that's left to do is to grind up the skeletons by farmers, because you might need all that calcium to get the nutrients into the soil again. Jarl says, "Oh, that's brilliant! Undead ecosystem where ghouls eat and clean the place. Spectral undead who can cleanse the hauntings of places. Yeah. Oh hell yeah. Because I'm thinking like, because I always wondered like, why don't ghouls eat zombies? Right? Like, sure they're dangerous, but it's already dead flesh. So I could see ghouls. a pack, like almost not mindless, not mindless uh ghouls, like where they are animalistic, but they could actually be like a trained fighting force of ghouls. Could you imagine that? A ghoulish paladin is like, with like a weapon on their back and like a dark cloak or something. Um, Almost like grave diggers almost, but they're like a force to get rid of the zombies and skin the flesh from their bones and whatnot. Pretty nasty, but yeah. Gasper says I could see just this caveman barbarian using a rock on a stick, just going around bonking people in the skull, cracking their skulls open. We didn't even recontextualize, like, okay, so for example, classic vampires, they bite the neck, they drink blood. We have ghouls that eat flesh and whatnot, but we can start um, breaking down into little details and things, like maybe vampires drain emotions. Cam brought this up the other day. Maybe there's a vampiric clan that is different based on their weaknesses and what they eat. The same goes for all the other undead, right? So, for example, there might be okay, let's stick with vampires. So there might be some that feed on emotions, there might be some that feed on memories, on blood, on brains, on just the beating heart, on flesh itself. So you could go through a lot of, like, on nightmares and things, like you luck vampires. Do you really need to give somebody bad luck in a world like this? I think that might be taken a little too far. Like, wow. Yeah, someone's like, if it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. You're like, dude, it's better if you don't have any luck at all. Um, Gaster says basically what I'm proposing is a lobotomized raging caveman tank. Ooh, lobotomized. Ooh, ugh. Yeah, yeah. Now, would there be a group of people, like a caste system, where people would volunteer for that? Pretty nasty, but true. Or what if their brains could be removed and the brains become one thing and their bodies become something else? Ooh. Or ghosts. I don't know if you could do this with PCs. This might be a little bit difficult, just a little bit. I mean, especially if you go into like transhumanism, but imagine a PC is a spectral ghost that could inhabit different members of their family clan to have different physical capabilities because they're willing to be possessed by the ghost that is them, right? Or an enemy that just has these lobotomized human beings that have been bred for like speed, stealth, um, agility, and balance, um, hugely powerful, like trolls or minotaurs or like ogres, hill giants or something that they can just possess and use as temporary bodies because of their loyalty. I think that'd be sweet. Like Rickard's saying, like undead barbarians, scary as f. Undead tends to be immune to mind affecting spells, and that's like the one weakness of a barbarian. Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, Cam says, now I want to play in a ghoul party out to clean up undead. Call ourselves the Blue Wave. Oh man, yeah. Oh man, a ghoul party. Adventurers. Ooh. Oh. Oh man. The Jarl DM says vampires might even evolve to eat specific things. Clan Osri, who eat bones. Ooh. Vampires are the ones who consume whatever is left of the dead once the ghoul squad's got them. Yeah, vampires that eat the dead. Maybe there are like there's a weird specificity to it. I mean, hell, Vampire the Masquerade is kind of like that, right? Where like some vampires can't be seen in mirrors, others are can't cross running water. Yet there are others who look horrific. So you could have different vampire clans and just pull from that. Same thing with maybe ghoulish clans. Like some could be very barbaric and um, mindless meat eaters, whereas there might be others that are top hat wearing, um, uh, breast coat, monocle wearing uh, ghouls that are uh, very urbane in their presentation of eating, consuming the dead. And I could even, hey, who's to say that ghouls and gas don't have uh, loyal following of cattle themselves? Human beings that want to become, or are convinced to become, or tricked to become yet the next meal when they die, right? A ghoul sitting around the dinner table with human beings hung upside down and their throats slit, so blood's dripping into these big carafes that the vampires drink out of, and then the bodies are lowered down at a table so the ghouls can eat. Nasty. Gaster says, not undead, just lobotomized through a mixture of undead blood and a very low strength acid. Just dripped on the brain. Just dripped on their brains. Ooh, come on, man. That's brutal. I love it. Oh man. Go Could you imagine them going into battle and then like the top of their skull lifts up and like little like um like sound wave, like there's these little beetles or whatever things hiding away inside of their brains that just like comes out and like scurries down their bodies to like commit different types of go on different missions and whatnot, just to come back into their brain cavities again. Yeah. Clan Morbius, a clan that absorbs the very magic from the Mancer flesh, and allowing them to use the magic they sucked out of the mage themselves. Yes. um wow, I'm really liking this. Oof, oof. There's a gnat flying around. Sorry. Captain Bumble says, what about the Nazgul from the Lord of the Rings? I know that they're wraiths, but they're way different than the wraiths in the 5e monster manual. Are they? We don't know. So you could take it two ways, right? Are they their their names may have nothing to do with what they are, right? Everyone calls them the ring wraith because that's their origin, but you could make them just about any number of undead, like say mummies or mummy lords, right? They're just reskinned, and or you could maybe they are real wraiths. If just Lord of the Rings is a different storyline, but wraiths, was it wraiths and whites? When they kill something, they rise again as the undead under their control. I could see them being like um, lords of armies. As they kill their enemies, they rise again under their control to be inducted into these vast undead armies. See that? Uh, Jarl says vampires might even. Oh, I'm sorry. He says, I like the idea of this carefully created and evolved undead system where there is no waste at all. Perfect efficiency with each kind of undead filling a specific niche. You know, that might be the point of contention. So okay, this world has existed for a long time, and the different undead nations, whatever they are, always come together to ensure that there's this perfect bot, ecosystem, because all the newbies that are coming up keep throwing the ecosystem out of whack, and they have to keep crushing the newbies down because it's like, or maybe they have to keep crushing down the old guard because their brains are going insane. So there's this middle ground where they're like, listen, we have to keep the ecosystem in check, because if we let any of it get out of control, we're all gone in one way, shape, or form. So I could see like there may be like the PCs might be on missions for no other reason than to keep the status quo. It's like, no, we're not trying to liberate anyone. We're not trying to overthrow the vampire lords. We're just like, there might be a clan that you might have to get rid of, right? Like, oh, they live in the mountain pass? Yeah, we're going to have to crush them because they keep dumping their undead. And all they're doing is just creating more and more waves of, you know, carrion eaters or something like that. And they're destroying the water system. And we need that water system for our human cattle. You're going to have to do something about that, right? Um, Now, Jarl says Nazgul are sort of a mix of corporal and incorporeal undead. I consider them to be extremely powerful, like an arch wraith or something, on par with a mummy lord or a lich. I think, yeah, I think it behooves us not to mix and match some of the undead capabilities. So I could imagine there being like, okay, imagine different regions where, okay, let's go with mummies, right? So I could imagine mummified versions of all of the undead living in one region, where you might have lichified versions of the other undead in another region, where you might have ghoulified versions of undead in yet a third region. Like, for example, we know about the lich. You go through a ritual. You're a mad wizard. You go through a ritual to, become immortal, and you kill some people and blah blah blah, right? Slaughter them, so. But I can imagine that being like ghoulish liches and vampiric liches, and hell, even spectral or wraith or white like liches. Where they are all part of like a spell casting um pyramid of power, whereas in another place they might be mummified or mummy like undead. So you have like mummified wraiths and mummified skeletons and mummified zombies and whatnot. And you could reskin all that into like a cultural thing as well, where people are, if they're all lich like, they're all learning magic. And this other world, they're more warrior, um, skilled in battle, right? So they might have, I don't know, off the top of my head, I'm thinking like maybe there's something unique to them where, immunity to fire or, man, I don't, shit, what would religion be like? Anyway, um, Gaster Two Soul says I could see a ring wraith like monsters, perhaps ghosts who wish to find an item they had lost and others wish to possess. It doesn't have to be a ring. It could be a lamp wraith wanting their precious oil lamp back. Well, it's for those who don't know, there is an excellent setting that is undersold, and I think it was excellent when it came out, excellent till today, was Wraith the Oblivion, made by White Wolf. And in Wraith the Oblivion, you had something called fetters. And fetters were a person, place, or thing. You played a ghost, what they call a wraith, and you had a person, place, or thing that you were attached to keep you in this physical world. I could see the same thing being done for ghosts. On one hand, it gives them power, but on the other hand, it's their greatest weakness. And if you possess their fettered item, you have control over that ghost. Or on the other hand, if you wear the ring of their fettered item, they get to easily possess you. So I could see it working both ways. So I'm down with all that. Yeah. Um, boo, boo, boo. Cameron says the Witch King of Angmar was even more powerful than the average Nazgul. He could wield great magics and apparently a flail the size of New Zealand. Yeah. Oh man. And you could even play with some of the weaknesses, right? Like who's to say I would how I would play this would be as a game master, getting into a little bit of mechanics. I would do a simple rule of give and take. Um, give one of your monsters an ability it doesn't have, and then if you give it an ability, then you have something that can take it away. Like vampires have, for all their power, they have a lot of limitations: sunlight, faith, fire, and all the other things, running water, garlic, blah, 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 right? So if I were to say make a ghast, also have mummy rot, then and maybe let's say give a ghast mummy rot and the ability to control rats like a vampire, right? Then I would give it a limitation like say um, they are afraid of their own reflection and they are just as and daylight, they're burned by daylight, right? Like you could do something like that. I would do a give and take, list a bunch of abilities, list a bunch of weaknesses, and just match them up some kind of way, or just make them random. I could see that. Um, Gaster says a maybe due to the blotting of the sun and the spirit in the magic world leaking into our world, we could have new flora and fauna that grow and appear from the ground. Ugh, would you want that? Such as a flower that could act as a new source of light known as a sun blazer. Ooh, maybe like a almost like the world is trying to bring back balance to it. So there are these like little pockets of possibility for humanity to like cultivate for their own defenses. That makes a lot of sense. Like we haven't decided like where would the gods be in all this? Like all the dead that are trying to go off into the afterlife. The gods are like, where's everybody? Hello, running around like tumbleweed, rolling around Valhalla and all that. Yeah. Um, Dante says I'm listening to this building 40K models, and I'm wondering about the Necron Society. They have no living, and technically, um, you probably probably spell corrected on you. Afternoon undead, more like sleeved consciousnesses. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I could see sleeved consciousnesses where there's a an hierarchy of ghosts or rebellious spirits or something needing to get into the bodies of human beings or something. Yeah. Or a human being who has a cadre of like ghosts, ancestral ghosts that follow them around, giving them instruction, cultivating them into being this like badass warrior or something like. Dante says technically these aren't autocorrected. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shaking my head. You're all right, man. Jarl says Necrons are really cool future versions of undead. Replace their physical bodies with mechanical ones and really cool Egyptian pharaoh theming. Yeah, who's to say we can't have the same thing in this world, right? Um, where do gnomes and artificers live in this world? Maybe they're building mechanical body parts to make up for the body parts that start falling off because the zombies are starting to rot away. I I could see that happening. Now, talking about Gaster's new flora and fauna says, or a plant that has drinkable sugar water coming out of it called a gleam cup, and maybe it's a valuable alchemical ingredient and valuable food source. Um, you know, there's a book I read. I stole the idea of there was a dark wood with all these white trees in it. The trees had no flowers on it. There was just these black landscape with these white trees that look like they were made out of bones. And what happens if you traveled through this landscape, you would start to get slowly fall asleep. And eventually you would fall asleep and lay on the ground or lean against one of these trees, and your body would rot. And then tendrils would leak up from the ground and a tree would grow out of your chest. And so if you looked closely at the roots of all these trees, they were the bones of the dead, of the people that fell asleep in this massive forest of white bony trees or something like that. I definitely could see new flora and fauna, whether there are wild monsters out there that feed off of the undead. Um, I have no idea what would happen to plants when the powdered bones of the undead go into the plant root systems. Like, could you mix undead and plants together? I I could see that. Undead treants and other kinds of plants and assassin vines and things. You know, plants growing, but it's actually dead foliage, but it's all dead trees and stuff, but they're growing nonetheless. Hell yeah. Hell, there might even be squads of of these undead or necromancers sending people out to squash these beacons of radiant light that are existing in the world, either randomly or through storms, or I don't know, hell, even when the blotted out sun, every once in a while the sun shines down and it's literally radiant light that shines down from the heavens, and the very few humans that are free are like, stand under the radiant sun just to live one more day, you know. um Gaster says, oh, I have a tree for that. The talking willow. It's not exactly far off from what you have in mind. Yeah, yeah. Hell, maybe there's like the last few living druids in this world that have the power to bring back life and light. Um, Combination druids and clerics and whatnot. Um, Hell, I could even see, imagine a little ball of like radiant light, just barely alive. You almost have to like blow on it to keep the light alive, and they're passing it from one person to the next just so that they can keep it and then pass it with, I'm old. Like, old, you're like 42. I'm on my last days, youngin. Here, take the light of life and justice, and take it with you. Breathe more life into it, just carrying it around, hoping that they can just take it from one person to the next or something. Oh man. Dante says, sorry about that. Dante says, their new angle looks like they're steering back to horror, like Alien / horror gothic. They feel more Stargate now. Are you thinking of? Oh, you're thinking about the Necrons. Um, yeah, and Deadman says the latest Necron Codex goes into depth about how they came about, and yeah, the history of this world. I could see literally the history of this world being. You're all right, man. You squirreled up. You're all right. I could see the history of this world being built, literally and figuratively being built on the bones of the next one. And because they're undead and immortal, they could just rewrite history the way they want to. So after like 2, 3, 4 generations, they can they can the the few living free human beings that are running around in this world might be able to delve deep into the underground rafters of the empires that came before to try to find a weapon that would save them from this place. Uh, Gaster says, what happens is that people would chain prisoners to the willow tree, and throughout the day, the branches and roots would grow into the prisoner's body. Ooh, and then it reaches to your heart. It turns you into part of the tree, and you're still alive and conscious while it happens. Maybe, maybe that's a different way. You remember the yellow musk zombies? Maybe there's a new like that's nature's way of coming up with its own defenses in this strange new world, um where the people that are still conscious going through all this pain, they're going insane from the pain and torture, till eventually they just lose their minds, and and in order for them to live longer and longer, they have to come back to the tree, and you see them like kneel down by the tree and the roots grow into their brains or into their heart or something like that. Or maybe they get like wrapped up into the bark and the branches of the tree. So if you see them from a distance, you just see these human beings that are like half melded into these massive trees. But at a certain point, they're able to meld out of them and like go to battle as these like mindless undead. Oh, hey, there's Star Fox Fantasy. Got to come in with the cyborg necromancers versus the robot demons. Yeah, you love it, don't you? Um, Gaster says vampires usually use um taking willows against political prisoners or humans who can't breed or give blood because of a disease. Yeah, we didn't think about a lot of those problems, like humans that have diseases or mutations. Um, what would free humans be doing in this world, right? Like, what kind of power would they have? Who uh, I I can I am thinking of that the enemies of my enemy would be their friends, right? So like a Lich King one place might be at war between like a council of mummy lords who are trying to somehow get allies with a group of gas and their cadre of warriors that go out and kill swarms of zombies or something. And I can imagine some of these undead lords being killed off, but their entourage being scattered to the winds. So somebody's got to clean that up as well. So there might be like these dried up lakes that are like muddy, but they're filled with the undead, and their legs are like stuck in the ponds and lakes and streams, or these massive chasms filled with dead bodies and the sun blotted out because it's just terrible. Um, yeah, I this is a pretty nasty gothic world setting, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it a lot. So we're getting to the end. As far as rebellions go, I could see this going one of two ways, and I think both would exist simultaneously. I could see there being like the classic, like holy knights, radiancy, light, and magic. People holding on to their ground, fighting against the overwhelming odds, and then I could see others selling bits and pieces of their soul to just to survive in this world, right? Like, the whole like warlock patron kind of thing, where I'll sell my soul, the lesser of the lesser of two evils, right? Or thinking about it like organized crime stories, where there's no real good guy; it's just the lesser of all the evils. Where yeah, everybody's pretty bad, but holding people as cattle, that's another level of evil, you know. Whereas if sure, my PC in their short or long rest drinks the blood of the innocent people that give of themselves to make me more powerful. Of course, my PC does that. Why wouldn't yours? How do you think I get my hit dice back? But on the other hand, they're like, yeah, but they're willing. You're keeping people as a food source and slaves. That's not a good thing. Um, Willow Packer, the Tory. Ugh. Willow Packer, the storyteller, says, "What happens when gods become undead, or when undead become gods?" We didn't bring that up. We didn't even bring up faith at all. So, are the gods dead in this world, or maybe something happened when the gods rise again as undead beings of a pale shadow of what they used to be? So the elemental god of air has risen as undead. So now like the clouds are all blackened and storm laced, the sun blotted out. There's barely a wind. It's just a pale, cold wind that blows across the landscape. No longer bringing you know life giving. There's no longer life giving rains or anything like that. I can see that. Dante says, "Can gods become undead? Is that what happens when you are a god, but forgotten?" Don't. Yeah, maybe that's the case. Maybe there are the few remaining human beings that even believe in them. Um, the gods are on their last deathbed, and the world taken over by these undead vampire mummy lich lords or whatever are barely keeping the gods alive, just barely. Because otherwise, wouldn't they be pissed off that their faithful aren't crossing over to go to like the happy hunting grounds or Nirvana or the seven heavens, or like they'd be pissed off. You're playing Planescape, they're like, where is everybody? Why is Concordia so empty? you know um Gaster Two Soul says maybe the last god to have survived is death, and he's just there, biding his time until a cure for vampirism is found. Ooh, ooh, damn. You know what? The god of death might just be on the side of all the other gods, because even the god of death wants souls to come down to like Hades or Tartarus or whatever, and they're like, hey, where is everybody? And the gods of good are like, yeah, where is everybody? And they're like, we need to work together, even though we're, the enemy of my enemy, right? We need to work together to stop this, because the human beings or the humanity isn't passing on. So that might be a thing. Undead Christmas with an undead Santa Claus and undead reindeer. Ooh, and some might call that blasphemous. Ooh, nasty. um, Star Fox fantasies like necromancers use undead to go in unlev sit for the living. I'm thinking you mean I don't get it. Dante says back to 40K, the emperor of mankind is the corpse god, and he may have only become a god by dying. And nobody says the gods have to be traditional, right? If you think about the chicken and the egg thing, there may be a pantheon of gods who only represent the different stages of life and death. So, a corpse god, the dying god, the desiccated god, the skeletal god. Like there might be gods in this world, they just don't represent what we normally think of, right? So instead of a god of like the oceans, there might be a god of like sludge and black and brackish water or something. It might be like a dark twist on all the classic tropes. Rickard says there's a reason why the god of death tends to be against undeath in most settings. Yep. The god of death becomes the hero, right? Yeah, it's like, wait, where is everybody? 'Twas the night before Halloween. Yeah. Gaster says perhaps free humans have gone. Ooh, shoot, got too far. Perhaps free humans have gone far enough from the cities, they could actually find some meadows with sunlight. Maybe some free humans have built cabins to live in. Maybe temporarily. Maybe the last god to have survived is death, and he's just there biding his time. Maybe death. Why is it? It just keeps jumping on me. Maybe death gives his hand of divine Maybe death gives his hand of divine intervention. Gives him a hand of divine intervention because he's watched his love, life, and all of his friends die, and now he's alone. Ooh, yeah, maybe the other gods have died off, maybe, and the god of death is the last one, and in this world, the god of death becomes the hero. Oh, maybe the god of death is sitting there in Hades with the other gods down there, and the god of death thought he would win but caused this to happen. So now all the other gods are down with the god of death sitting over them. Now all the gods are down in the god of death's region, and now it's like, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Maybe I didn't want to win, the Olympian gods down in Tartarus or something like that. And he's like, damn it. I didn't know this was going to happen. Star Fox bio-wizardly skeleton gun used by Lich Warlord Space King. You're just rolling on a random table, aren't you? Gaster continues on. Maybe for this version, Death is actually the good guy in the situation. To quote a tiny bit of dialogue I made for him, what is life when death is no longer absent? Yeah, what is it? I like the idea of people going insane too. I really like that. Rickard says the god of death grants immortality to their followers to fight the undead civilizations. Immortality as in the god won't come to collect their soul, or the god keeps putting their soul back into new bodies. The legionnaires of 1,000 deaths. Ooh, shit. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's we can go on and on with this, and you guys know that the epitome of what we do here is just to come up with so many ideas you can steal, making a setting or something. I feel like some of us should write this out. But yeah, just hell, come on back and start to play it, stop, write down, play a little bit, stop, whatever. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for being part of the show. We're definitely going to talk about this tomorrow for third pillar of Exploration Thursday, and definitely Future Friday, where we talk about like transhumanism and will this fit into transhumanism? I'm thinking yes, but we're still going to keep on the discussion. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Just as a reminder, I am a writer for Critical Hit Publishing. We have 2 new releases, and we're still moving on. Wetlands is the new release. The cinematic environments is my brainchild. I love it so much. Thank you very much, Rob and Alex, for helping that come to fruition. I think there's 9 books so far, and fingers crossed we're going to have a compendium pretty soon. So keep watch out for that as well. So guys, have a great one. I will see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Where's my thanks for watching tag? There it goes. There we go. Thank you very much. Have a great one.